One as usual, Julian gave her a book. Just like the year before, and the year before, and every holiday or occasion he could find in between his sister's birthdays. She had shelves of his so-called gifts. Some given in truth, and some to simply clear space in the library he called a bedroom, where books were stacked so high and so precariously that even the cats had trouble navigating the labyrinthine piles. The subjects varied, from adventure tales of prairie raiders to stuffy poetry collections about the insipid royal court they both strived to avoid. Better for kindling, Corrie Anne would say every time he left her another dull volume. Once, for her 12th birthday, Julian gave her an ancient text written in a language she could not read. And one she assumed he only pretended to understand. Despite her dislike for the majority of his stories, she kept her own growing collection on neat shelves, strictly alphabetized, their spines facing forward to display titles on leather bindings. Most would go untouched, unopened, unread, a tragedy even Julian could not find the words to bemoan. There is nothing so terrible as a story untold. But Corrie Anne kept them all the same, well dusted, polished, their gold-stamped letters gleaming in the hazy light of summer or winter's grey castings. From Julian was scrawled in each one, and those words she treasured above almost all. Only his frou gifts were loved more, the manuals and guides sheathed in plastic, tucked between the pages of a genealogy or encyclopedia. A few held court at her bedside, snug beneath her mattress, to be pulled out at night when she could devour technical schematics and machine studies. How to build, break down, and maintain transport engines, airjays, telegraphy equipment, even light bulbs and kitchen stoves. Her father did not approve, as was the usual way. A silver daughter of a noble high house should not have fingers stained in motor oil, nails chipped by borrowed tools, or bloodshot eyes from too many nights spent straining over unsuitable literature. But House Yakos forgot his misgivings every time the video screen in the estate parlour shorted out, hissing sparks and blurred transmissions. "Fix it, Corrie, fix it." She did as he commanded, hoping each time would be the one to convince him. Only to have her tinkering sneered at a few days later, and all her good work forgotten. She was glad he was gone, away in the capital aiding their uncle, the Lord of House Yakos. This way she could spend her birthday with the people she loved. Namely, her brother, Julian, and Sarah Sconis, who had come specifically for the occasion. Growing prettier by the day, Corrie Anne thought, noting her dearest friend. It had been months since their last meeting, when Sarah turned 15 and moved permanently to the royal court. Not so long really, but already the girl seemed different, sharper. Her cheekbones cut cruelly beneath skin somehow paler than before, as if drained. And her grey eyes, once bright stars, seemed dark, full of shadows. But her smile came easily, as it always did around the Yakos children. Around Julian, truly, Corrie Anne knew. And her brother was just the same, grinning broadly, keeping a distance no uninterested boy would think to keep. He was surgically aware of his movements, and Corrie Anne was surgically aware of her brother. At 17, he was not too young for proposals, and she suspected there would be one in the coming months. Julian had not bothered to unwrap her gift. It was already beautiful on its own. Leatherbound, striped in the dusty yellow golds of House Yakos, with the burning crown of Nauta embossed into the cover. There was no title on the face or spine, and Corrie Anne could tell there was no hidden guidebook in its pages. She scowled a little. "It, Corrie," Julian said, stopping her before she could toss the book onto the meagre pile of other presents. All of them veiled insults, gloves to hide common hands, impractical dresses for a court she refused to visit, and an already opened box of sweets her father didn't want her to eat. They would be gone by dinner time. Corrie Anne did as instructed and opened the book to find it empty. Its cream pages were blank. She wrinkled her nose, not bothering to put on the show of a grateful sister. Julian required no such lies, and would see through them anyway. What's more, there was no one here to scold her for such behaviour. Mother is dead, father gone, and cousin Jessamine is blissfully still asleep. Only Julian, Corrie Anne, and Sarah sat alone in the garden parlour, TLNEE beads rattling around the dusty jar of the Yarkos estate. It was a yawning room that matched the ever-present, hollow ache in Corrie Anne's chest. Arched windows overlooked a tangled grove of once orderly roses that had not seen the hands of a greenwooden in a decade. The floor needed a good sweeping, and the gold draperies were grey with dust, and most likely spider webs as well. Even the painting over the soot-stained marble fireplace was missing its gilt frame, sold off long ago. The man who stared out from the naked canvas was Corrie Anne and Julian's own grandfather, Janus Yarkos, who would certainly despair of his family's state. Poor nobles, trading on an old name and traditions, making do with little and less every year. Julian laughed, making the usual sound. Fond exasperation, Corrie Anne knew. It was the best way to describe his attitude toward his younger sister. 2 years his junior, and always quick to remind her of his superior age and intellect. Gently, of course. As if that made any difference. It's for you to write in, he pressed on, sliding long, thin fingers over the pages. Your thoughts, what you do with your days. I know what a diary is, she replied, snapping the book shut. He didn't mind, not bothering to be offended. Julian knew her better than anyone. Even when I get the words wrong. And my days don't warrant much of a record. Nonsense, you're quite interesting when you try. Corrie Anne grinned. Julian, your jokes are improving. Have you finally found a book to teach you humour? Her eyes flickered to Sarah. Or someone. While Julian flushed, his cheeks bluing with silver blood, Sarah took it in stride. I'm a healer, not a miracle worker, she said, her voice a melody. Their joined laughter echoed, filling the emptiness of the estate house for one kind moment. In the corner, the old clock chimed, tolling the hour of Corrie Anne's doom. Namely, cousin Jessamine, who would arrive at any moment. Julian was quick to stand, stretching a lanky form transitioning into manhood. He still had growing to do, both up and out. Corrie Anne, on the other hand, had been the same height for years and showed no sign of changing. She was ordinary in everything, from almost colourless blue eyes to limp chestnut hair that stubbornly refused to grow much farther than her shoulders. You didn't want these, did you? He said as he reached across his sister. He snatched a few sugar-glassed candies from the box, earning a swat in reply. Etiquette be damned. Those are mine. Careful, he whined, I'll tell Jessamine. No need, came their elderly cousin's reedy whistle of a voice, echoing from the columned entrance to the parlour. With a hiss of annoyance, Corrie Anne shut her eyes, trying to will Jessamine Yarkos out of existence. No use in that, of course. I'm not a whisper. Just a singer. And though she could have tried to use her meagre abilities on Jessamine, it would only end poorly. Old as Jessamine was, her voice and ability were still whip-sharp, far quicker than her own. I'll end up scrubbing floors with a smile if I try her. Corrie Anne pasted on a polite expression and turned to find her cousin leaning upon a bejewelled cane, one of the last beautiful things in their house. Of course, it belonged to the foulest. Jessamine had long ago stopped frequenting silver skin healers, to age gracefully as she put it. Though, in truth, the family could no longer afford such treatments from the most talented of House Sconus, or even the skin healer apprentices of common, lesser birth. Her skin sagged now, grey in pallor, with purple age spots across her wrinkled hands and neck. Today she wore a lemon silk yumap around her head, to hide thinning white hair that barely covered her scalp, and a flowing dress to match. The moth-eaten edges were well hidden, though. Jessamine excelled at illusion. "Be a dear and take those to the kitchen, Julian, won't you?" she said, jabbing a long-nailed finger at the candies. "The staff will be so grateful." It took all Corrie Arne's strength not to scoff. The staff was little more than a red butler more ancient than Jessamine, who didn't even have teeth, as well as the cook and 2 young maids, who were somehow expected to maintain the entire estate. They might enjoy the candies, but of course Jessamine had no true intention of letting them. They 11 end up at the bottom of the trash, or tucked away in her own room more like. Julian felt quite the same, judging by his twisted expression. But arguing with Jessamine was as fruitless as the trees in the corrupted old orchard. "Of course, cousin," he said with a voice better suited to a funeral. His eyes were apologetic, while Corrie Arne's were resentful. She watched with a thinly veiled sneer as Julian offered one arm to Sarah, the other scooping up her unsuitable gift. Both were eager to escape Jessamine's domain, but loath to leave Corrie Arne behind. Still, they did it, sweeping away from the parlour. "That's right, leave me here. You always do." Abandoned to Jessamine, who had taken it upon herself to turn Corrie Arne into a proper daughter of House Jacos. Put simply, silent. And always left to their father, when he returned from court, from long days waiting for Uncle Jared to die. The head of House Jacos, governor of the Adirondack region, had no children of his own, and so his titles would pass to his brother, and then Julian after him. At least, he had no children anymore. The Fivens, Jenna and Caspian, were killed in the Lakelander War, leaving their father without an heir of his flesh, not to mention the will to live. It was only a matter of time before Corrie Arne's father took up the ancestral seat, and he wanted to waste no time doing so. Corrie Arne found the behaviour perverse at best. She couldn't imagine doing such a thing to Julian, no matter how angry he made her. To stand by and watch him waste away with grief. It was an ugly, loveless act, and the thought of it turned her stomach. "But I have no desire to lead our family, and father is a man of ambition, if not tact." What he planned to do with his eventual rise, she did not know. House Jacos was small, unimportant, governors of a backwater with little more than the blood of a high house to keep them warm at night. And of course, Jessamine, to make sure everyone pretended like they weren't drowning. She took a seat with the grace of one half her age, knocking her cane against the dirty floor. "Preposterous," she muttered, striking at a haze of dust motes swirling in a beam of sunlight. "So hard to find good help these days. Especially when you can't pay them," Corrie Arne sneered in her head. "Indeed, cousin. So difficult. Well, hand them over. Let's see what Jared sent along," she said. One clawed hand reached out, flapping open and closed in a gesture that made Corrie Arne's skin crawl. She bit her lip between her teeth, chewing it to keep from saying the wrong thing. Instead, she lifted the 2 dresses that were her uncle's gifts and laid them upon the sofa where Jessamine perched. Sniffing, Jessamine examined them as Julian did his ancient texts. She squinted at the stitching and lacework, rubbing the fabric, pulling at invisible stray threads in both golden dresses. "Suitable," she said after a long moment. "If not outdated. None of these are the latest fashions." What a surprise, Corrie Arne could not help but drawl. Thwack. The cane hit the floor. "No sarcasm, it's unbecoming of a lady." "Well, every lady I've met seems well versed in it, yourself included. If I can even call you a lady." In truth, Jessamine had not been to the royal court in at least a decade. She had no idea what the latest fashions were, and, when she was deep in the gin, could not even remember which king was on the throne. Tiberius VI? 5th? No, it's the 4th still, certainly, the old flame just won't die. And Corrie Arne would gently remind her that they were ruled by Tiberius V. His son, the Crown Prince, would be Tiberius VI when his father died. Though with his reputed taste for warfare, Corrie Anne wondered if the prince would live long enough to wear a crown. The history of Norta was fraught with calor firebrands dying in battle, mostly second princes and cousins. She quietly wished the prince dead, if only to see what would happen. He had no siblings that she knew of, and the calor cousins were few, not to mention weak, if Jessamyn's lessons could be frustrated. Nona had fought Lakelanders for a century, but another war within was certainly on the horizon. Between the high houses, to put another family on the throne. Not that House Yakos would be involved at all. Their insignificance was a constant, just like cousin Jessamyn. Well, if your father's communications are to be believed, these dresses should be of use soon enough, Jessamyn carried on as she set the presents down. Unconcerned with the hour or Corrie Anne's presence, she drew a glass bottle of gin from her gown and took a hearty sip. The scent of juniper bit the air. Frowning, Corrie Anne looked up from her hands, now busy wringing the new gloves. "Is Uncle unwell?" Thwack. What a stupid question. He's been unwell for years, as you know. Her face burned silver with a florid blush. I mean, worse. Is he worse? Harris thinks so. Jared has taken to his chambers at court, and rarely attends social banquets, let alone his administrative meetings or the governor's council. Your father stands in for him more and more these days. Not to mention the fact that your uncle seems determined to drink away the coffers of House Yakos. Another swig of gin? Corrie Anne almost laughed at the irony. How selfish. Yes, selfish, the young girl muttered. You haven't wished me a happy birthday, cousin. But she did not press on that subject. It hurts to be called ungrateful, even by a leech. Another book from Julian, I see. Oh, and gloves. Wonderful, Harris took my suggestion. And Sconis, what did she bring you? Nothing. Yet. Sarah had told her to wait, that her gift wasn't something to be piled with the others. No gift. Yet she sits here, eating our food, taking up space. Corrie Anne did her best to let Jessamyn's words float over her and away, like clouds in a windblown sky. Instead, she focused on the manual she read last night. Batteries. Cathodes and anodes, primary use are discarded, secondary can be recharged, thwack. Yes, Jessamyn. A very bug-eyed old woman stared back at Corrie Anne, her annoyance written in every tinkle. I don't do this for my benefit, Corrie Anne. Well, it certainly isn't for mine, she couldn't help but hiss. Jessamyn crowed in response, her laugh so brittle she might spit dust. You'd like that, wouldn't you? To think that I sit here with you, suffering your scowls and bitterness for fun? Think less of yourself, Corrie Anne. I do this for no one but House Yakos, for all of us. I know what we are better than you do. And I remember what we were before, when we lived at court, negotiated treaties, were as indispensable to the Calor kings as their own flame. I remember. There is no greater pain or punishment than memory. She turned her cane over in her hand, one finger counting the jewels she polished every night. Sapphires, rubies, emeralds, and a single diamond. Given by suitors or friends or family, Corrie Anne did not know. But they were Jessamyn's treasure, and her eyes glittered like the gems. Your father will be Lord of House Yakos, and your brother after him. That leaves you in need of a lord of your own. Lest you wish to stay here forever. Like you. The implication was clear, and somehow Corrie Anne found she could not speak around the sudden lump in her throat. She could only shake her head. No, Jessamyn, I do not want to stay here. I don't want to be you. Very good, Jessamyn said. Her cane thwacked once more. Let's begin for the day. Later that evening, Corrie Anne sat down to write. Her pen flew across the pages of Julian's gift, spilling ink as a knife would blood. She wrote of everything. Jessamyn, her father, Julian. The sinking feeling that her brother would abandon her to navigate the coming hurricane alone. He had Sarah now. She'd caught them kissing before dinner, and while she smiled, pretending to laugh, pretending to be pleased by their flushes and stuttered explanations, Corrie Anne quietly despaired. Sarah was my best friend. Sarah was the only thing that belonged to me. But no longer. Just like Julian, Sarah would drift away, until Corrie Anne was left with only the dust of a forgotten home and a forgotten life. Because no matter what Jessamine said, how she preened and lied about Corrie Anne's so-called prospects, there was nothing to be done. No one will marry me, at least no one I want to marry. She despaired of it and accepted it in the same turn. I will never leave this place, she wrote. These golden walls will be my tomb. 2 Jared Yakos received 2 funerals. The first was at court in Aachen, on a spring day hazy with rain. The second would be a week after, at the estate in Adirondack. His body would join the family tomb and rest in a marble sepulchre paid for with one of the jewels from Jessamine's cane. The emerald had been sold off to a gem merchant in East Aachen while Corrie Anne, Julian, and their aged cousin looked on. Jessamine seemed detached, not bothering to watch as the green stone passed from the new Lord Yakos' hand to the silver jeweller. A common man, Corrie Anne knew. He wore no house colours to speak of, but he was richer than they were, with fine clothes and a good amount of jewellery all over. We might be noble, but this man could buy us all if he wanted. The family wore black, as was custom. Corrie Anne had to borrow a gown for the occasion, one of Jessamine's many horrid mourning frocks, for Jessamine had attended and overseen more than a dozen funerals of House Yakos. The young girl itched in the get-up but kept still as they left the merchant quarter, heading for the great bridge that spanned the capital river, connecting both sides of the city. Jessamine would scold or hit me if I started scratching. It was not Corrie Anne's first visit to the capital, or even her 10th. She'd been there many times, usually at her uncle's bidding, to show the so-called strength of House Yakos. A foolish notion. Not only were they poor, but their family was small, wasting, especially with the Fivens gone. No match to the sprawling family trees of houses Iril, Samos, Rimbaud, and more. Rich bloodlines that could support the immense weight of their many relations. Their place as high houses was firmly cemented in the hierarchy of both nobility and government. Not so with Yakos. If Corrie Anne's father, Harris, could not find a way to prove his worth to his peers and his king. For her part, Corrie Anne saw no way through it. Adirondack was on the Lakelander border, a land of few people and deep forest no one needed to log. They could not claim mines or mills or even fertile farmland. There was nothing of use in their corner of the world. She had tied a golden sash around her waist, cinching in the ill-fitting, high-collared dress in an attempt to look a bit more presentable, if not in fashion. Corrie Anne told herself she didn't mind the whispers of court, the sneers from the other young ladies who watched her like she was a bug, or worse, a red. They were all cruel girls, silly girls, waiting with bated breath for any news of Queen Stryle. But of course that wasn't true. Sarah was one of them, wasn't she? A daughter of Lord Sconus, training to be a healer, showing great promise in her abilities. Enough to service the royal family if she kept to the path. I desire no such thing, Sarah said once, confiding in Corrie Anne months before, during a visit. It will be a waste if I spend my life healing paper cuts and crow's feet. My skills would be of better use in trenches of the Choke or the hospitals of Corvium. Soldiers die there every day, you know. Reds and silvers both, killed by Lakelander bombs and bullets, bleeding to death because people like me stay here. She would never say so to anyone else, least of all her Lord Father. Such words were better suited to midnight, when two girls could whisper their dreams without fear of consequence. I want to build things, Corrie Anne told her best friend on such an occasion. Build what, Corrie Anne? Airjays, airships, transports, video screens, ovens. I don't know, Sarah, I don't know. I just want to make something. Sarah smiled then, her teeth glinting in a slim beam of moonlight. Make something of yourself, you mean? Don't you, Corey? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I can see why Julian likes you so much. That quieted Sarah right away, and she was asleep soon after. But Corey-Anne kept her eyes open, watching shadows on the walls, wondering. Now, on the bridge, in the middle of brightly coloured chaos, she did the same. Nobles, citizens, merchants seemed to float before her, their skin cold, pace slow, eyes hard and dark no matter their colour. They drank in the morning with greed, a quenched man still gulping at water while others died of thirst. The others were the Reds, of course, wearing the bands that marked them. The servants among them wore uniforms, some striped with the colours of the high house they served. Their movements were determined, their eyes forward, hurrying along on their errands and orders. They have purpose at least, Corey-Anne thought. Not HKE. She suddenly felt the urge to grab onto the nearby lamp-post, to yum up her arms around it lest she be carried away like a leaf on the wind, or a stone dropping through water. Flying or drowning or both. Going where some other force willed. Beyond her own control. Julian's hand closed around her wrist, forcing her to take his arm. He'll do, she thought, and a cord of tension relaxed in her. Julian will keep me here. Later on, she recorded little of the official funeral in her diary, long spattered with ink splotches and cross-outs. Her spelling was improving though, as was her penmanship. She wrote nothing of Uncle Jared's body, his skin whiter than the moon, drained of blood by the embalming process. She did not record how her father's lip quivered, betraying the pain he truly felt for his brother's death. Her writings were not of the way the rain stopped, just long enough for the ceremony, or the crowd of lords who came to pay their respects. She did not even bother to mention the king's presence, or that of his son, Tiberius, who brooded with dark brows and an even darker expression. Uncle is gone, she wrote instead of all this. And somehow, in some way, I envy him. As always, she tucked the diary away when she was finished, hiding it beneath the mattress of her bedchamber with the rest of her treasures. Namely, a little palette of tools. Jealously guarded, taken from the abandoned gardener's shed back home. 2 screwdrivers, a delicate hammer, 1 set of needle-nose pliers, and a wrench rusted almost beyond use. Almost. There was a coil of spindly wire as well, carefully drawn from an ancient lamp in the corner that no one would miss. Like the estate, the Yarkos townhouse in West Arshan was a decaying place. And damp, too, in the middle of the rainstorm, giving the old walls the feel of a dripping cave. She was still wearing her black dress and gold sash, with what she told herself were raindrops clinging to her lashes, when Jessamine burst through the door. To fuss, of course. There was no such thing as a banquet without a twittering Jessamine, let alone one at court. She did her best to make Corey-Anne as presentable as possible with the meagre time and means available, as if her life depended upon it. Perhaps it does. Whatever life she holds dear. Perhaps the court is in need of another etiquette instructor for the noble children, and she thinks performing miracles with me will win her the position. Even Jessamine wants to leave. There now, none of this, Jessamine muttered, swiping at Corey-Anne's tears ether tissue. Another swipe, this time with a chalky black pencil, to make her eyes stand out. Purple-blue rouge along her cheeks, giving her the illusion of bone structure. Nothing on the lips, for Corey-Anne had never mastered the art of not getting lipstick on her teeth or water glass. I suppose it will do. Yes, Jessamine. As much as the old woman delighted in obedience, Corey-Anne's manner gave her pause. The girl was sad, clearly, in the wake of the funeral. What's the matter, child? Is it the dress? I don't care about faded black silks or banquets or this vile court. I don't care about any of it. Nothing at all, cousin. Just hungry, I suppose." Corrie Anne reached for the easy escape, throwing one flaw to Jessamine to hide another. "Mercy upon your appetite," she replied, rolling her eyes. "Remember, you must eat daintily, like a bird. There should always be food on your plate. Pick, 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 pick." The words felt like sharp nails drumming on Corrie Anne's skull. But she forced a smile all the same. It bit at the corners of her mouth, hurting just as much as the words and the rain and the falling sensation that had followed her since the bridge. Downstairs, Julian and their father were already waiting, huddled close to a smoky fire in the hearth. Their suits were identical, black with pale golden sashes across their chests from shoulder to hip. Lord Yakos tentatively touched the newly acquired pin stuck in his sash, a beaten gold square as old as his house. Nothing compared to the gems, medallions, and badges of the other governors, but enough for this moment. Julian caught Corrie Anne's eye, beginning to wink for her benefit, but her downcast air stopped him cold. He kept close to her all the way to the banquet, holding her hand in the rented transport, and then her arm as they crossed through the great gates of Caesar's Square. Whitefire Palace, their destination, sprawled to their left, dominating the south side of the tiled square now busy with nobles. Jessamine buzzed with excitement, despite her age, and made sure to smile and nod at everyone who passed. She even waved, letting the flowing sleeves of her black and gold gown glide tln off the air. Communicating with clothes, Corrie Anne knew. How utterly stupid. Just like the rest of this dance that will end with the further disgrace and downfall of House Yakos. Why delay the inevitable? Why play at a game we can't hope to compete in? She could not fathom it. Her brain knew circuitry better than high society, and despaired at ever understanding the latter. There was no reason to the court of Nauta, or even her own family. Even Julian. "I know what you asked of father," she muttered, careful to keep her chin tucked against his shoulder. His jacket muffled her voice, but not enough for him to claim he couldn't hear her. His muscles tightened beneath her. "Corrie, I must admit, I don't quite understand. I thought," her voice caught. "I thought you would want to be with Sarah, now that we'll have to move to court. You asked to go to Delphi, to work with the scholars and excavate ruins rather than learn lordship at Father's right hand. Why would you do that? Why, Julian? And the worst question of all, the one she didn't have the strength to ask, how could you leave me too?" Her brother heaved a long sigh and tightened his grip. I do. But, has something happened?" "No, nothing at all." "Good or bad," he added, and she could hear the hint of a smile in his voice. "I just know she won't leave court if I'm here with father. I can't do that to her. This place, I won't trap her here in this pit of snakes." Corrie Anne felt a pang of sorrow for her brother and his noble, selfless, stupid heart. "You'd let her go to the front, then?" "There's no let where I'm concerned. She should be able to make her own decisions. And if her father, Lord Sconus, disagrees, as he surely will, then I'll marry her as planned and bring her to Delphi with me. Always a plan with you." "I certainly try." Despite the swell of happiness, her brother and best friend married, the familiar ache tugged at Corrie Anne's insides. "They'll be together, and you left alone?" Julian's fingers squeezed her arm suddenly, wan despite the misting rain. "And of course, I'll send for you as well. You think I'd leave you to face the royal court with no one but father and Jessamine?" Then he kissed her cheek and winked. "Think a bit better of me, Corrie." For his sake, she forced a wide, white grin that flashed in the lights of the palace. She felt none of its gleam. How can Julian be so smart and so stupid at the same time? It puzzled and saddened her in succession. Even if their father agreed to let Julian go to study in Delphi, Corianne would never be allowed to do the same. She was no great intellect, channer, beauty, or warrior. Her usefulness lay in marriage, in alliance, and there were none to be found in her brother's books or protection. White fire was done up in the colours of House Calor, black and red and royal silver from every alabaster column. The windows winked with inner light, and sounds of a roaring party filtered from the grand entrance, manned by the king's own sentinel guards in their flaming robes and masks. As she passed them, still clutching Julian's hand, Corianne felt less like a lady, and more like a prisoner being led into her cell. 3 Corton did her best to pick at her meal. She also debated pocketing a few gold-inlaid forks. If only House Merindus did not face them across the table. They were whispers, all of them, mind readers who probably knew Corianne's intentions as well as she did. Sarah told her she should be able to feel it, to notice if one of them poked into her head, and she kept rigid, on edge, trying to be mindful of her own brain. It made her silent and white-faced, staring intensely at her plate of pulled-apart and uneaten food. Julian tried to distract, as did Jessamine, though she did so unintentionally. All but falling over herself to compliment Lord and Lady Merindus on everything from their matching outfits, a suit for the lord and gown for the lady, both shimmering like a blue-black sky of stars, to the profits of their ancestral lands, mostly in Haven, including the techie slum of Merry Town, a place Corianne knew was hardly merry. The Merindus brood seemed intent on ignoring House Yakos as best they could, keeping their attentions on themselves and the raised banquet table where the royals ate. Corianne could not help but steal a glance at them as well. Tiberius V, King of Nona, was in the centre naturally, sitting tall and lean in his ornate chair. His black dress uniform was slashed with crimson silk and silver braid, all meticulously perfect and in place. He was a beautiful man, more than handsome, with eyes of liquid gold and cheekbones to make poets weep. Even his beard, regally speckled with grey, was neatly razored to an edged perfection. According to Jessamine, his queen's style was a bloodbath of warring ladies vying to be his queen. None seemed to mind that the king would never love them. They only wanted to mother his children, keep his confidence, and earn a crown of their own. Queen Annabel, an oblivion of House Lerolin, did just that. She sat on the king's left, her smile curling, eyes on her only son. Her military uniform was open at the neck, revealing a firestorm of jewels at her throat, red and orange and yellow as the explosive ability she possessed. Her crown was small but difficult to ignore, black gems that winked every time she moved, set into a thick band of rose gold. The king's paramour wore a similar band on his head, though the gemstones were absent from this crown. He didn't seem to mind, his smile fiercely bright while his fingers intertwined with the king's. Prince Robert of House Earl. He had not a drop of royal blood, but held the title for decades at the king's orders. Like the queen, he wore a riot of gems, blue and red in his house colours, made more striking by his black dress uniform, long ebony hair, and flawless bronze skin. His laugh was musical, and it carried over the many voices echoing through the banquet hall. Corianne thought he had a kind look, a strange thing for one so long at court. It comforted her a little, until she noticed his own house seated next to him, all of them sharp and stern, with darting eyes and feral smiles. She tried to remember their names, but knew only one, his sister, Lady Ara, the head of House Earl, seeming it in every inch. As if she sensed her gaze, Ara's dark eyes flashed to Corianne's, and she had to look elsewhere. To the prince. Tiberius VI one day, but only Tiberius now. A teenager, Julian's age, with the shadow of his father's beard splotched unevenly across his jaw. He favoured wine, judging by the empty glass hastily being refilled and the silver blush blooming across his cheeks. She remembered him at her uncle's funeral, a dutiful son standing stoic by a grave. Now he grinned easily, trading jokes with his mother. His eyes caught hers for a moment, glancing over Queen Annabel's shoulder to lock on to the Yakos girl in an old dress. He nodded quickly, acknowledging her stare, before returning to his antics and his wine. "I can't believe she allows it," said a voice across the table. Corrie Anne turned to find Ilera Merendus also staring at the royals, her keen and angled eyes narrowed in distaste. Like her parents, Ilera's outfit sparkled, dark blue silk and studded white gems, though she wore a wrapped blouse with slashed, cape sleeves instead of a gown. Her hair was long, violently straight, falling in an ash curtain of blonde over one shoulder, revealing an ear-studded with crystal brilliance. The rest of her was just as meticulously perfect. Long dark lashes, skin more pale and flawless than porcelain, with the grace of something polished and pruned into court perfection. Already self-conscious, Corrie Anne tugged at the golden sash around her waist. She wished nothing more than to walk out of the hall and all the way back to the townhouse. "I'm speaking to you, Yakos." "Forgive me if I'm surprised," Corrie Anne replied, doing her best to keep her voice even. Ilera was not known for her kindness, or much else for that matter. Despite being the daughter of a ruling lord, Corrie Anne realized she knew little of Whisper Girl. "What are you talking about?" Ilera rolled bright blue eyes with the grace of a swan. "The Queen, of course. I don't know how she stands to share a table with her husband's whore, much less his family. It's an insult, plain as day." Again, Corrie Anne glanced at Prince Robert. His presence seemed to soothe the king, and if the Queen truly minded, she didn't show it. As she watched, all three crowned royals were whispering together in gentle conversation. But the crown prince and his wineglass were gone. "I wouldn't allow it," Ilera continued, pushing her plate away. "It was empty, eaten clean. At least she has spine enough to eat her food. And it would be my house sitting up there, not his. It's the Queen's right and no one else's. So she'll even be competing in Queen style, then." "Of course I will." Fear snapped TLN off Corrie Anne, chilling her. "Did she?" "Yes." A wicked smile spread across Ilera's face. It burned something in Corrie Anne and she nearly fell back in shock. She felt nothing, not even a brush inside her head, no indication that Ilera was listening to her thoughts. She sputtered. "Excuse me." Her legs felt foreign as she stood, wobbly from sitting through 13 courses. But still under her own power, thankfully. Blank 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 blank, she thought, picturing white walls and white paper and white nothing in her head. Ilera only watched, giggling into her hand. "Corrie," she heard Julian say, but he didn't stop her. Neither did Jessamine, who would not want to cause a scene. And her father didn't notice at all, more engrossed in something Lord Provost was saying. Blank 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 blank. Her footsteps were even, not too fast or too slow. "How far or must I, father?" said Ilera's sneering purr in her head. She nearly tripped over at the sensation. The voice echoed in everything around and in her, windows to bone, from the chandeliers overhead to the blood pounding in her ears. "Father, Yakos." Blank 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 blank. She did not realize she was whispering the words to herself, fervent as a prayer, until she was out of the banquet hall, down a passage, and through an etched glass door. A tiny courtyard rose around her, smelling of rain and sweet flowers. Blank 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 blank, she mumbled once more, moving deeper into the garden. Magnolia trees twisted in an arch, forming a crown of white blossoms and rich green leaves. It was barely raining anymore, and she moved closer to the trees for shelter from the final drippings of the storm. It was chillier than she expected, but Corrie Anne welcomed it. Ilera echoed no longer. Sighing, she sank down onto a stone bench beneath the grove. Its touch was colder still and she tapped her arms around herself. "I can help with that," said a deep voice, the words slow and plodding. Corrie Anne whirled, wide-eyed. She expected Alara haunting her, or Julian, or Jessamine to scold her abrupt exit. The figure standing a few feet away was clearly not any of them. "Your Highness," Corrie Anne said, jumping to her feet so she could bow properly. The Crown Prince Tiberius stood over her, pleasant in the darkness, a glass in one hand and a half-empty bottle in the other. He let her go through the motions and kindly said nothing of her poor form. "That'll do," he finally said, motioning for her to stand. She did as commanded with all haste, straightening up to face him. "Yes, Your Highness." "Would you care for a glass, my lady?" he said, though he was already filling the cup. No one was foolish enough to refuse an offer from a Prince of Nauta. "It's not a coat, but it will warm you well enough." "Pity there's no whiskey at these functions." Corrie Anne forced a nod. "Pity, yes," she echoed, never having tasted the bite of brown liquor. With shaking hands, she took the full glass, her fingers brushing his for a moment. His skin was warm as a stone in the sun, and she was struck by the need to hold his hand. Instead, she drank deep of the red WME. He matched her, albeit sipping straight from the bottle. How crude, she thought, watching his throat bob as he swallowed. "Jessam would skin me if I did that." The prince did not sit next to her, but maintained his distance, so that she could only feel the ghost of his warmth. Enough to know his blood ran hot even in the damp. She wondered how he managed to wear a trim suit without sweating right through it. Part of her wished he would sit, only so she could enjoy the second-hand heat of his abilities. But that would be improper, on both their parts. "You're the niece of Jard Yakos, yes?" His tone was polite, well-trained. An etiquette coach probably followed him since birth. Again, he did not wait for an answer to his question. "My condolences, of course." "Thank you." "My name is Corrie Anne," she offered, realizing he would not ask. He only asks what he already knows the answer to. He dipped his head in acknowledgement. "Yes. And I won't make fools of both of us by introducing myself." In spite of propriety, Corrie Anne felt herself smile. She sipped at the wine again, not knowing what else to do. Jessamine had not given her much instruction on conversing with royals of House Calor, let alone the future king. Speak when spoken to was all she could recall, so she kept her lips pressed together so tightly they formed a thin line. Tiberius laughed openly at the sight. He was maybe a little drunk, and entirely amused. "Do you know how annoying it is to have to lead every single conversation?" He chuckled. "I talk to Robert and my parents more than anyone else, simply because it's easier than extracting words from other people." "How wretched for you," she snapped in her head. "That sounds awful," she said as demurely as she could. "Perhaps when you're king, you can make some changes to the etiquette of court." "Sounds exhausting," he muttered back around swigs of wine. "And unimportant, in the scheme of things. There's a war on, in case you haven't noticed." He was right. The wine did warm her a bit. "A war," she said. "Where? When? I've heard nothing of this." The prince whipped to face her quickly, only to find Corrie Anne smirking a little at his reaction. He laughed again, and tipped the bottle at her. "You had me for a second there, Lady Yakos." Still grinning, he moved to the bench, sitting next to her. Not close enough to touch, but Corrie Anne still went stock still, her playful edge forgotten. He pretended not to notice. She tried her best to remain calm and poised. "So I'm out here drinking in the rain because my parents frown upon being intoxicated in front of the court." The heat of him flared, pulsing with his inner annoyance. Corrie Anne revelled in the sensation as the cold was chased from her bones. "What's your excuse?" "No, wait, let me guess, you were seated with House Marenduss, yes?" Gritting her teeth, she nodded. Whoever arranged the tables must hate the party planners don't hate anyone but my mother. She's not one for decorations or flowers or seating charts, and they think she's neglecting her queenly duties. Of course, that's nonsense, he added quickly. Another drink? She sits on more war councils than father and trains enough for the both of them. Corrie Anne remembered the queen in her uniform, a splendour of medals on her chest. She's an impressive woman, she said, not knowing what else to say. Her mind flitted back to Ilera Merendus, glaring at the royals, disgusted by the queen's so-called surrender. Indeed. His eyes roved, landing on her now empty glass. Care for the rest? He asked, and this time he truly was waiting for an answer. I shouldn't, she said, putting the wineglass down on the bench. In fact, I should go back inside. Jessamine, my cousin, will be furious with me as it is. I hope she doesn't lecture me all night. Overhead, the sky had deepened to black, and the clouds were rolling away, clearing the rain to reveal bright stars. The prince's bodily warmth, fed by his burner ability, created a pleasant pocket around them, one Corrie Anne was loath to leave. She heaved a steady breath, drawing in one last gasp of the magnolia trees, and forced herself to her feet. Tiberius jumped up with her, still deliberate in his manners. Shall I accompany you? He asked as any gentleman would. But Corrie Anne read the reluctance in his eyes and waved him off. No, I won't punish both of us. His eyes flashed at that. Speaking of punishment, if Ilera whispers to you ever again, you show her the same courtesy. How did you know it was her? A storm cloud of emotions crossed his face, most of them unknown to Corrie Anne. But she certainly recognized anger. She knows, as everyone else knows, that my father will call for Queen Stryle soon. I don't doubt she's wriggled into every maiden's head, to learn her enemies and her prey. With almost vicious speed, he drank the last of the wine, emptying the bottle. But it was not empty for long. Something on his wrist sparked, a starburst of yellow and white. It ignited into flame inside the glass, burning the last drops of alcohol in its green cage. I'm told her technique is precise, almost perfect. You won't feel her if she doesn't want you to. Corrie Anne tasted bile at the back of her mouth. She focused on the flame in the bottle, if only to avoid Tiberius's gaze. As she watched, the heat cracked the glass, but it did not shatter. Yes, she said hoarsely. It feels like nothing. Well, you're a singer, aren't you? His voice was suddenly harsh as his flame, a sharp, sickly yellow behind green glass. Give her a taste of her own medicine. I couldn't possibly. I don't have the skill. And besides, there are laws. We don't use ability against our own, outside the proper channels. This time, his laugh was hollow. And is Ilera Merendus following that law? She hits you, you hit her back, Corrie Anne. That's the way of my kingdom. It isn't your kingdom yet, she heard herself mutter. But Tiberius didn't mind. In fact, he grinned darkly. I suspected you had a spine, Corrie Anne Yakos. Somewhere in there. No spine. Anger hissed inside her, but she could never give it voice. He was the prince, the future king. And she was no one at all, a limp excuse for a silver daughter of a high house. Instead of standing up straight, as she wished to do, she bent into one more curtsy. Your Highness, she said, dropping her eyes to his booted feet. He did not move, did not close the distance between them as a hero in her books would. Tiberius Calor stood back and let her go alone, returning to a den of wolves with no shield but her own heart. After some distance, she heard the bottle shatter, spitting glass across the magnolia trees. A strange prince, an even stranger MGHT, she wrote later. I don't know if I ever want to see him again. But he seemed lonely too. Should we not be lonely together? At least Jessamine was too drunk to scold me for running of. For life at court was neither better nor worse than life on the estate. The governorship came with greater incomes, but not nearly enough to elevate House Iarcos beyond much more than the basic amenities. Corrie Anne still did not have her own maid, nor did she want one, though Jessamine continued to crow about needing help of her own. At least the Arshan town house was easier to maintain, rather than the Adirondack estate now shuttered in the wake of the family's transplant to the capital. "I miss it, somehow," Corrie Anne wrote. "The dust, the tangled gardens, the emptiness and the silence. So many corners that were my own, far from father and Jessamine and even Julian." Most of all she mourned the loss of the garage and outbuildings. The family had not owned a working transport in years, let alone employed a driver, but the remnants remained. There was the hulking skeleton of the private transport, a six-seater, its engine transplanted to the floor like an organ. Busted water heaters, old furnaces cannibalized for parts, not to mention odds and ends from their long-gone gardening staff, littered the various sheds and holdings. "I leave behind unfinished puzzles, pieces never put back together. It feels wasteful. Not of the objects, but myself, so much time spent stripping wire or counting screws. For what? For knowledge I will never use. Knowledge that is cursed, inferior, stupid, to everyone else. What have I done with myself for 15 years? A great construct of nothing. I suppose I miss the old house because it was with me in my emptiness, in my silence. I thought I hated the estate, but I think I hate the capital more." Lord Iarcos refused his son's request, of course. His heir would not go to Delphi to translate crumbling records and archive petty artifacts. "No point in it," he said. Just as he saw no point in most of what Corrie Anne did, and regularly voiced that opinion. Both children were gutted, feeling their escape snatched away. Even Jessamine noticed their downturn in emotion, though she said nothing to either. But Corrie Anne knew their old cousin went easy on her in their first months at court, or rather, she was hard on the drink. For as much as Jessamine talked of Arshan and Somerton, she didn't seem to like either very much, if her gin consumption was any indication. More often than not, Corrie Anne could slip away during Jessamine's daily nap. She walked the city many times in hopes of finding a place she enjoyed, somewhere to anchor her in the newly tossing sea of her life. She found no such place, instead she found a person. He asked her to call him Tib after a few weeks. A family nickname, used among the royals and a precious few friends. "All right," then Corrie Anne said, agreeing to his request. "Saying Your Highness was getting to be a bit of a pain." They first met by chance, on the massive bridge that spanned the capital river, connecting both sides of Arshan. A marvelous structure of twisted steel and trussed iron, supporting 3 levels of roadway, plazas, and commercial squares. Corrie Anne was not so dazzled by silk shops or the stylish eateries jutting out over the water, but more interested in the bridge itself, its construction. She tried to fathom how many tons of metal were beneath her feet, her mind a flurry of equations. At first, she didn't notice the sentinels walking toward her, nor the prince they followed. He was clear-headed this time, without a bottle in hand, and she thought he would pass her by. Instead, he stopped at her side, his warmth a gentle ebb like the touch of a summer sun. "Lady Iarcos," he said, following her gaze to the steel of the bridge. "Something interesting?" She inclined her head in a bow, but didn't want to embarrass herself with another poor curtsy. "I think so," she replied. "I was just wondering how many tons of metal we're standing on, hoping it will keep us up." The prince let out a puff of laughter tinged with nervous. He shifted his feet, as if suddenly realizing exactly how high above the water they were. "I'll do my best to keep that thought out of my head," he mumbled. "Any other frightening notions to share?" "How much time do you have?" she said with half a grin. "Half only, because something tugged at the rest, weighing it down." The cage of the capital was not a happy place for Corian, nor Tiberius Calor. "Would you favor me with a walk?" he asked, extending an arm. This time, Corian saw no hesitation in him, or even the pensive wonderings of a question. He knew her answer already. Of course. And she slipped her arm in his. "This will be the last time I hold the arm of a prince," she thought as they walked the bridge. She thought that every time, and she was always wrong. In early June, a week before the court would flee Aachen for the smaller but just as grand summer palace, Tib brought someone to meet her. They were to rendezvous in East Aachen, in the sculpture garden outside the Hexapron Theatre. Corian was early, for Jessamine started drinking during breakfast, and she was eager to get away. For once, her relative poverty was an advantage. Her clothes were ordinary, clearly silver, as they were striped in her house colours of gold and yellow, but nothing remarkable. No gems to denote her as a lady of a high house, as someone worth noticing. Not even a servant in uniform to stand a few paces behind. The other silvers floating through the collection of carved marble barely saw her, and for once, she liked it that way. The green dome of Hexapron rose above, shading her from the still rising sun. A black swan of smooth, flawless granite perched at the top, its long neck arched and wings spread wide, every feather meticulously sculpted. A beautiful monument to silver excess. And probably red-made, she knew, glancing around. There were no reds nearby, but they bustled on the street. A few stopped to glance at the theatre, their eyes raised to a place they could never inhabit. "Perhaps I'll bring Eliza and Melanie someday." She wondered if the maids would like that, or be embarrassed by such charity. She never found out. Tib's arrival erased all thoughts of her red servants, and most other things along with them. He had none of his father's beauty, but was handsome in his own way. Tib had a strong jaw, still stubbornly trying to grow a beard, with expressive golden eyes and a mischievous smile. His cheeks flushed when he drank and his laughter intensified, as did his rippling heat, but at the moment he was sober as a judge and twitchy. Nervous, Corian realized as she moved to meet him and his entourage. Today he was dressed plainly but not as poorly as me. No uniform, medals, nothing official to denote this a royal event. He wore a simple coat, charcoal grey, over a white shirt, dark red trousers, and black boots polished to a mirror shine. The sentinels were not so informal. Their masks and flaming robes were mark enough of his birthright. "Good morning," he said, and she noticed his fingers drumming rapidly at his side. "I thought we could see fall of winter. It's new, from Piedmont." Her heart leapt at the prospect. The theatre was an extravagance her family could hardly afford and, judging by the glint in Tib's eye, he knew that. "Of course, that sounds wonderful." "Good," he replied, hooking her arm in his own. It was second nature to both of them now, but still Corian's arm buzzed with the feel of him. She had long decided theirs was only a friendship, he is a prince, bound to Queen Strile, though she could still enjoy his presence. They left the garden, heading for the tiled steps of the theatre and the Fontaine Plaza before the entrance. Most stopped to give them room, watching as their prince and a noble lady crossed to the theatre. A few snapped photographs, the bright lights blinding Corian, but Tib smiled through it. He was used to this sort of thing. She didn't mind it either, not truly. In fact, she wondered whether or not there was a way to dim the camera bulbs, and prevent them from stunning anyone who came near. The thought of bulbs and wire and shaded glass occupied her until Tib spoke. "Robert will be joining us, by the way," he blurted as they crossed the threshold, stepping over a mosaic of black swans taking flight. At first, Corian barely heard him, stunned as she was by the beauty of Hexapron, with its marbled walls, soaring staircases, explosions of flowers, and mirrored ceiling hung with a dozen gilded chandeliers. But after a second, she clamped her jaw shut and turned back to Tib to find him blushing furiously, worse than she had ever seen. She blinked at him, concerned. In her mind's eye she saw the king's paramour, the prince who was not royal. "That's quite all right with me," she said, careful to keep her voice low. There was a crowd forming, eager to enter the matinee performance. "Unless it isn't all right with you?" "No, no, I'm very happy he came. I asked him to come." Somehow, the prince was tripping over his words, and Corianne could not understand why. "I wanted him to meet you." "Oh," she said, not knowing what else to say. Then she glanced down at her dress, ordinary, out of style, and frowned. "I wish I wore something else." "It's not every day you meet a prince," she added with the shadow of a wink. He barked a laugh of humour and relief. "Clever, Corianne, very clever." They bypassed the ticket booths, as well as the public entrance to the theatre. Tib led her up one of the winding staircases, offering her a better view of the massive foyer. As on the bridge, she wondered who made this place, but deep clown, she knew. Red labour, red craftsman, with perhaps a few magnetrons to aid the process. There was the usual twinge of disbelief. How could servants create such beauty and still be considered inferior? They are capable of wonders different from our own. They gain skill through handiwork and practice, rather than birth. Is that not equal to silver's strength, if not greater than it? But she did not dwell on such thoughts long. She never did. This is the way of the world. The royal box was at the end of a long, carpeted hall decorated by paintings. Many were of Prince Robert and Queen Annabel, both great patrons of the arts in the capital. Tib pointed them out with pride, lingering by a portrait of Robert and his mother in full regalia. "Annabel hates that painting," a voice said from the end of the hall. Like his laugh, Prince Robert's voice had a melody to it, and Corianne wondered if he had singer blood in his family. The prince approached, gliding silently across the carpet with long, elegant strides. A silk, Corianne knew, remembering he was of House Errol. His ability was agility, balance, lending him swift movement and acrobat-like skill. His long hair fell over one shoulder, gleaming in dark waves of blue-black. As he closed the distance between them, Corianne noticed grey at his temples, as well as laugh lines around his mouth and eyes. "She doesn't think it a true likeness of us, too pretty, you know your mother," Robert continued, coming to stop in front of the painting. He gestured to Annabel's face and then his own. Both seemed to glow with youth and vitality, their features beautiful and eyes bright. "But I think it's just fine. After all, who doesn't need a little help now and then?" he added with a kind wink. "You'll find that soon enough, Tib." "Not if I can help it," Tib replied. "Sitting for paintings might be the most boring act in the kingdom." Corianne angled a glance at him. "A small price to pay, though. For a crown." "Well said, Lady Iarcos, well said." Robert laughed, tossing back his hair. "Step lightly around this one, my boy. Though it seems you've already forgotten your manners." Of course," Tib said, and waved his hand, gesturing for Corianne to come closer. "Uncle Robert, this is Corianne of House Iarcos, daughter of Lord Harris, Governor of Adirondack. And Corianne, this is Prince Robert of House Errol, sworn consort of His Royal Majesty, King Tiberius V." Her curtsy had improved in the past months, but not by much. Still, she attempted, only to have Robert pull her into an embrace. He smelled of lavender and baked bread. "A pleasure to finally meet you," he said, holding her at arm's length. For once, Corianne did not feel as if she was being examined. There didn't seem to be an unkind bone in Robert's body, and he smiled warmly at her. "Come now, they should be starting momentarily." As Tib did before, Robert took her arm, patting her hand like a doting grandfather. You must sit by me, of course. Something tightened in Corrie Anne's chest, an unfamiliar sensation. Was it happiness? She thought so. Grinning as widely as she could, she looked over her shoulder to see Tib following, his eyes on hers, his smile both joyous and relieved. The next day, Tib left with his father to review troops at a fort in Delphi, leaving Corrie Anne free to visit Sarah. House Sconus had an opulent townhouse on the slopes of West Arshan, but they also enjoyed apartments in Whitefire Palace itself, should the royal family have need of a skilled skin healer at any moment. Sarah met her at the gates unaccompanied, her smile perfect for the guards, but a warning to Corrie Anne. "What's wrong? What is it?" she whispered as soon as they reached the gardens outside the Sconus chambers. Sarah drew them farther into the trees, until they were inches from an ivy-draped garden wall, with immense rose bushes on either side, obstructing them both from view. A thrum of panic went through Corrie Anne. Has something happened to Sarah's parents? Was Julian wrong? Would Sarah leave them for the war? Corrie Anne selfishly hoped that was not the case. She loved Sarah as well as Julian did, but was not so willing to see her go, even for her own aspirations. Already the thought filled her with dread, and she felt tears prick her eyes. "Sarah, are you going to?" she began, stammering, but Sarah waved her off. "Oh, Corrie, this has nothing to do with me. Don't you dare cry," she added, forcing a small laugh while she hugged Corrie Anne. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. I just didn't want to be overheard." Relief flooded through Corrie Anne. "Thank my colours," she mumbled. "So what requires such secrecy? Is your grandmother asking you to lift her eyebrows again? I certainly hope not." "Then what? You met Prince Robert?" Corrie Anne scoffed. "And? This is court, everyone's met Robert, everyone knows him, but they don't have private audiences with the king's paramour. In fact, he's not at all well liked. Can't imagine why. He's probably the kindest person here. Jealousy mostly, and a few of the more traditional houses think it's wrong to elevate him so high. Croned prostitute is the term most used." Corrie Anne flushed, both with anger and embarrassment on Robert's behalf. "Well, if it's a scandal to meet him and like him, I don't mind in the least. Neither did Jessamine, actually. She was quite excited when I explained, because Robert isn't the scandal, Corrie Anne." Sarah took her hands, and Corrie Anne felt a bit of her friend's ability seep into her skin. A cool touch that meant her paper cut from yesterday would be gone in a blink. "It's you and the Crown Prince, your closeness. Everyone knows how tightly knit the royal family is, particularly where Robert is concerned. They value him and protect him above everything. If Tiberius wanted you two to meet, then despite the pleasant sensation, Corrie Anne dropped Sarah's hands. "We're friends. That's all this ever can be." She forced a giggle that was quite unlike herself. "You can't seriously think Tib sees me as anything more, that he wants or even can want anything more from me." She expected her friend to laugh with her, to wave it all off as a joke. Instead, Sarah had never looked so grave. "All signs point to yes, Corrie Anne." "Well, you're wrong. I'm not, he wouldn't, and besides, there's Queen Stryle to think of. It must be soon, he's of age, and no one would ever choose me." Again, Sarah took Corrie Anne's hands and gave them a gentle squeeze. "I think he would." "Don't say that to me," Corrie Anne whispered. She looked to the roses, but it was Tib's face she saw. It was familiar now, after months of friendship. She knew his nose, his lips, his jaw, his eyes most of all. They stirred something in her, a connection she did not know she could make with another person. She saw herself in them, her own pain, her own joy. "We are the same," she thought. "Searching for something to keep us anchored, both alone in a crowded room. It's impossible." And telling me this, giving me any kind of hope where he is concerned. She sighed and bit her lip. I don't need that heartache along with everything else. He's my friend, and I'm his. Nothing more. Sarah was not one for fancies or daydreaming. She cared more for mending broken bones than broken hearts. So Corianne could not help but believe her when she spoke, even against her own misgivings. Friend or not, Tib favours you. And for that alone, you must be careful. He's just painted a target on your back, and every girl at court knows it. Every girl at court hardly knows who I am, Sarah. But still, she returned home vigilant. And that night, she dreamed of knives in silk, cutting her apart. 5. There would be no Queen's trial. 2 months passed at the Hall of the Sun, and with every dawn the court waited for some announcement. Lords and ladies pestered the king, asking when his son would choose a bride from their daughters. He was not moved by anyone's petition, meeting all with his beautiful, stoic eyes. Queen Annabel was quite the same, giving no indication as to when her son would undertake his most important duty. Only Prince Robert had the boldness to smile, knowing precisely what storm gathered on the horizon. The whispers rose as days passed. They wondered if Tiberius was like his father, preferring men to women, but even then, he was bound to choose a queen to bear him sons of his own. Others were more astute, picking up the trail of carefully laid breadcrumbs Robert had left for them. They were meant to be gentle, helpful signposts. The prince has made his choice clear, and no arena will change his mind. Corianne Iacos dined with Robert regularly, as well as Queen Annabel. Both were quick to praise the young girl, so much so that the gossips wondered if House Iacos was as weak as they appeared. A trick, they said. A poor mask to hide a powerful face. The cynics among them found other explanations. She's a singer, a manipulator. She looked into the prince's eyes and made him love her. It would not be the first time someone broke our laws for a crown. Lord Harmes revelled in the newfound attention. He used it as leverage, to trade on his daughter's future for Tetrarch coins and credit. But he was a poor player in a large, complicated game. He lost as much as he borrowed, betting on cards as well as treasury stocks or undertaking ill-thought, costly ventures to improve his governed region. He founded 2 mines at the behest of Lord Samos, who assured him of rich iron veins in the Adirondack Hills. Both failed within weeks, turning up nothing but dirt. Only Julian was privy to such failures, and he was careful to keep them from his sister. Tib, Robert, and Annabel did the same, shielding her from the worst gossip, working in conjunction with Julian and Sarah to keep Corianne blissful in her ignorance. But of course, Corianne heard all things even through their protections. And to keep her family and friends from worry, to keep them happy, she pretended to be the same. Only her diary knew the cost of such lies. Father will bury us with both hands. He boasts of me to his so-called friends, telling them I'm the next queen of this kingdom. I don't think he's ever paid so much attention to me before, and even now, it is minuscule, not for my own benefit. He pretends to love me now because of another, because of Tib. Only when someone else sees worth in me does he condescend to do the same. Because of her father, she dreamed of a queen's trial she did not win, of being cast aside and returned to the old estate. Once there, she was made to sleep in the family tomb, beside the still, bare body of her uncle. When the corpse twitched, hands reaching for her throat, she would wake, drenched in sweat, unable to sleep for the rest of the night. Julian and Sarah think me weak, fragile, a porcelain doll who will shatter if touched, she wrote. Worst of all, I'm beginning to believe them. Am I really so frail? So useless? Surely I can be of some help somehow, if Julian would only ask. Are Jessamine lessons the best I can do? What am I becoming in this place? I doubt I even remember how to replace a light bulb. I am not someone I recognize. Is this what growing up means? Because of Julian, she dreamed of being in a beautiful room. But every door was locked, every window shut, with nothing and no one to keep her company. Not even books. Nothing to upset her. And always, the room would become a birdcage with gilded bars. It would shrink and shrink until it cut her skin, waking her up. I am not the monster the gossips think me to be. I've done nothing, manipulated no one. I haven't even attempted to use my ability in months, since Julian has no more time to teach me. But they don't believe that. I see how they look at me, even the whispers of House Merendus. Even Alera. I have not heard her in my head since the banquet, when her sneers drove Metotib. Perhaps that taught her better than to meddle. Or maybe she is afraid of looking into my eyes and hearing my voice, as if I'm some kind of match for her razored whispers. I am not, of course. I am hopelessly undefended against people like her. Perhaps I should thank whoever started the rumor. It keeps predators like her from making me prey. Because of Alera, she dreamed of ice blue eyes following her every move, watching as she donned a crown. People bowed under her gaze and sneered when she turned away, plotting against their newly made queen. They feared her and hated her in equal measure, each one a wolf waiting for her to be revealed as a lamb. She sang in the dream, a wordless song that did nothing but double their bloodlust. Sometimes they killed her, sometimes they ignored her, sometimes they put her in a cell. All three wrenched her from sleep. To date said he loves me, that he wants to marry me. I do not believe him. Why would he want such a thing? I am no one of consequence. No great beauty or intellect, no strength or power to aid his reign. I bring nothing to him but worry and weight. He needs someone strong at his side, a person who laughs at the gossips and overcomes her own doubts. Tib is as weak as I am, a lonely boy without a path of his own. I will only make things worse. I will only bring him pain. How can I do that? Because of Tib, she dreamed of leaving court for good. Like Julian wanted to do, to keep Sarah from staying behind. The locations varied with the changing nights. She ran to Delphi or Harbour Bay or Piedmont or even the Lakelands, each one painted in shades of black and grey. Shadow cities to swallow her up and hide her from the prince and the crown he offered. But they frightened her too. And they were always empty, even of ghosts. In these dreams, she ended up alone. From these dreams, she woke quietly, in the morning, with dried tears and an aching heart. Still, she did not have the strength to tell him no. When Tiberius Calor, heir to the throne of Nauta, sank to a knee with a ring in hand, she took it. She smiled. She kissed him. She said, "Yes, you have made me happier than I ever thought I could be." Tib told her. "I know the feeling," she replied, meaning every word. She was happy, yes, in her own way, as best she knew. But there is a difference between a single candle in darkness, and a sunless. There was opposition among the high houses. Queen Stryle was their right, after all. To wed the most noble son to the most talented daughter. House Merendus, Samos, Asenos were once the front-runners, their girls groomed to be queens only to have even the chance of a crown snatched away by some nobody. But the king stood firm and there was precedent. At least 2 Calor kings before had wed outside the bonds of Queen Stryle. Tib would be the third. As if to apologize for the Queen Stryle slight, the rest of the wedding was rigidly traditional. They waited until Corian turned 16 the following spring, drawing out the engagement, allowing the royal family to convince, threaten, and buy their way to the acceptance of the high houses. Eventually all agreed to the terms. Corian Iarchos would be queen, but her children, all of them, would be subject to political weddings. A bargain she did not want to make, but Tib was willing, and she could not tell him no. Of course, Jessamine took credit for everything. Even as Corrie Anne was laced into her wedding gown, an hour from marrying a prince, the old cousin crowed across a brimful glass. "Look at your bearing, those are Yakos bones. Slender, graceful, like a bird." Corrie Anne felt nothing of the sort. "If I was a bird, then I could fly away with Tib." The tiara on her head, the first of many, poked into her scalp. "Not a good omen." "It gets easier," Queen Annabel whispered into her ear. Corrie Anne wanted to believe her. With no mother of her own, Corrie Anne had willingly accepted Annabel and Robert as substitute parents. In a perfect world, Robert would even walk her down the aisle instead of her father, who was still tetched. As a wedding gift, Hannes had asked for 5,000 tetrarchs in allowance. He didn't seem to understand that presents were usually given to the bride, not requested of her. Despite her soon-to-be royal position, he had lost his governorship to poor management. Already on thin ice due to Tib's unorthodox engagement, the royals could do nothing to help, and House Provost gleefully took up the governance of Adirondack. After the ceremony, the banquet, and even after Tib had fallen asleep in their new bedchamber, Corrie Anne scrawled in her diary. The penmanship was hasty, slurred, with sloping letters and blots of ink that bled through the pages. She did not write often anymore. "I am married to a prince who will one day be a KMG." Usually this is where the fairy tale ends. Stories don't go much further than this moment, and I fear there's a good reason for it. A sense of dread hung over today, a black cloud I still can't be rid of. It is an unease deep in the heart of me, feeding off my strength. Or perhaps I am coming down with sickness. It's entirely possible. Sarah will know. I keep dreaming of her eyes. Illyria's. Is it possible, could she be sending me these nightmares? Can whispers do such a thing? I must know. I must. One must. One must. For her first act as a princess of Norta, Corrie Anne employed a proper tutor, as well as taking Julian into her household. Both to hone her ability, and help her defend against what she called annoyances. A carefully chosen word. Once more, she elected to keep her problems to herself, to stop her brother from worry, as well as her new husband. Both were distracted. Julian by Sarah, and Tib by another well-guarded secret. The king was sick. It took 2 long years before the court knew anything was amiss. "It's been like this for some time now," Robert said, one hand in Corrie Anne's. She stood on a balcony with him, her face the picture of sorrow. The prince was still handsome, still smiling, but his vigor was gone, his skin grey and dark, leached of life. He seemed to be dying with the king. But Robert's was an ailment of the heart, not the bones and blood, as the healers said of the king's ills. A cancer, a gnawing, riddling Tiberius with rot and tummus. He shivered, despite the sun above, not to mention the hot summer air. Corrie Anne felt sweat on the back of her neck, but like Robert, she was cold inside. The skin healers can only do so much. If only he'd broken his spine, that'd be no trouble at all. Robert's laugh sounded hollow, a song without notes. The king was not yet dead, and already his consort was a shell of himself. And while she feared for her father-in-law, knowing that a painful, diseased death waited for him, she was terrified of losing Robert as well. He cannot succumb to this. I won't let him. It's fine, no need to explain, Corrie Anne muttered. She did her best not to cry, though every inch of her hoped to. How can this be happening? Are we not Silvers? Are we not gods? Does he need anything? Do you? Robert smiled an empty smile. His eyes flashed to her stomach, not yet rounded by the life inside. A prince or princess, she did not know yet. He would have liked to have seen that one. House Sconus tried everything, even cycling the king's blood. But whatever sickness he had never disappeared. It wasted at him faster than they could heal. Usually Robert stayed by him in his chamber, but today he left Tiberius alone with his son, and Corianne knew why. The end was near. The crown would pass, and there were things only Tib could know. The day the king died, Corianne marked the date and coloured the entire diary page in black ink. She did the same a few months later, for Robert. His will was gone, his heart refusing to beat. Something ate at him too, and in the end, it swallowed him whole. Nothing could be done. No one could hold him back from taking shadowed flight. Corianne wept bitterly as she inked the day of his ending in her diary. She carried on the tradition. Black pages for black deaths. One for Jessamine, her body simply too old to continue. One for her father, who found his end in the bottom of a glass, and 3 for the miscarriages she suffered over the years. Each one came at night, on the heels of a violent nightmare. 6 Corton was 21, and pregnant for a 4th time. She told no one, not even Tib. She did not want the heartache for him. Most of all, she wanted no one to know. If Ilera Merendus was truly still plaguing her, turning her own body against her unborn children, she didn't want any kind of announcement regarding another royal child. The fears of a fragile queen were no basis for banishing a high house, let alone one as powerful as Merendus. So Ilera was still at court, the last of the 3 Queenstril favourites still unmarried. She made no overtures to Tib. On the contrary, she regularly petitioned to join Corianne's ladies, and was regularly denied her request. It will be a surprise when I seek her out, Corianne thought, reviewing her meagre but necessary plan. She'll be off guard, startled enough for me to work. She had practiced on Julian, Sarah, even Tib. Her abilities were better than ever. I will succeed. The parting ball signalling the end of the season at the Summer Palace was the perfect cover. So many guests, so many minds. Ilera would be easy to get close to. She would not expect Queen Corianne to speak to her, let alone sing to her. But Corianne would do both. She made sure to dress for the occasion. Even now, with the wealth of the crown behind her, she felt out of place in her crimson and gold silks, a girl playing dress-up against the lords and ladies around her. Tib whistled as he always did, calling her beautiful, assuring her she was the only woman for him, in this world or any other. Normally it calmed her, but now she was only nervous, focused on the task at hand. Everything moved both too slowly and too quickly for her taste. The meal, the dancing, greeting so many curled smiles and narrowed eyes. She was still the singer-queen to so many, a woman who bewitched her way to the throne. If only that were true. If only I was what they thought me to be, then Ilera would be of no consequence. I would not spend every night awake, afraid to sleep, afraid to dream. Her opportunity came deep into the night, when the wine was running low and Tib was in his precious whiskey. She swept away from his side, leaving Julian to attend to her drunken king. Even Sarah did not notice her queen steal away, to cross the path of Ilera Merendus as she idled by the balcony doors. "Come outside with me, won't you, Lady Ilera?" Corianne said, her eyes wide and laser-focused on Ilera's own. To anyone who might pass by, her voice sounded like music and a choir, both elegant, heartbreaking, dangerous. A weapon as devastating as her husband's flame. Ilera's eyes did not waver, locked upon Corianne's, and the queen felt her heart flutter. "Focus," she told herself. "Focus, damn you." If the Merendus woman could not be charmed, then Corianne would be in for something worse than her nightmares. But slowly, sluggishly, Ilera took a step back, never breaking eye contact. "Yes," she said dully, pushing the balcony door open with one hand. They stepped out together, Corianne holding Ilera by the shoulder, keeping her from wavering. Outside, the night was sticky hot, the last gasps of summer in the upper river valley. Corianne felt none of it. Ilera's eyes were the only things in her mind. "Have you been playing with my mind?" she asked, cutting directly to her intentions. "Not for a while," Ilera replied, her eyes far away. "When was the last time?" "Your wedding day." Corian blinked, startled. "So long ago. What? What did you do?" "I made you trip." A dreamy smile crossed Ilera's features. "I made you trip on your dress." That's it." "Yes." "And the dreams?" "The nightmares?" Ilera said nothing. Because there's nothing for her to say, Corian knew. She sucked in a breath, fighting the urge to cry. "These fears are my own. They always have been. They always will be. I was wrong before I came to court, and I'm still wrong long after." "Go back inside," she finally hissed. "Remember none of this." Then she turned away, breaking the eye contact she so desperately needed to keep Ilera under her control. Like a person waking up, Ilera blinked rapidly. She cast a single confused glance at the Queen before hurrying away, back into the party. Corian moved in the opposite direction, toward the stone banister ringing the balcony. She leaned over it, trying to catch her breath, trying not to scream. Greenery stretched below her, a garden of fountains and stone more than 40 feet down. For a single, paralyzing second, she fought the urge to jump. The next day, she took a guard into her service, to defend her from any silver ability someone might use against her. If not Ilera, then surely someone else of House Merendus. Corian simply could not believe how her mind seemed to spin out of control, happy one second and then distraught the next, bouncing between emotions like a kite in a gale. The guard was of House Oven, the Silent House. His name was Rain, a savior clad in white, and he swore to defend his queen against all forces. They named the baby Tiberius, as was custom. Corian didn't care for the name, but acquiesced at Dib's request, and his assurance that they would name the next after Julian. He was a fat baby, smiling early, laughing often, growing bigger by leaps and bounds. She nicknamed him Cal to distinguish him from his father and grandfather. It stuck. The boy was the sun in Corian's sky. On hard days, he split the darkness. On good days, he lit the world. When Tib went away to the front, for weeks at a time now that the war ran hot again, Cal kept her safe. Only a few months old and better than any shield in the kingdom. Julian doted on the boy, bringing him toys, reading to him. Cal was apt to break things apart and jam them back together incorrectly, to Corian's delight. She spent long hours piecing his smashed gifts back together, amusing him as well as herself. "He'll be bigger than his father," Sarah said. Not only was she Corian's chief lady-in-waiting, she was also her physician. "He's a strong boy." While any mother would revel in those words, Corian feared them. Bigger than his father, a strong boy. She knew what that meant for a Kalor prince, an heir to the burning crown. "He will not be a soldier," she wrote in her newest diary. "I owe him that much. Too long the sons and daughters of House Kalor have been fighting, too long has this country had a warrior king, too long have we been at war, on the front and also within. It might be a crime to write such things, but I am a queen. I am the queen. I can say and write what I think." As the months passed, Corian thought more and more of her childhood home. The estate was gone, demolished by the Provost governors, emptied of her memories and ghosts. It was too close to the Lakelander border for proper Silvers to live, even though the fighting was contained to the bombed-out territories of the Choke. Even though few Silvers died, despite the Reds dying by the thousands. Conscripted from every corner of the kingdom, forced to serve and fight. Evil kingdom, Corian knew. Ali husband signs every conscription renewal, never stopping the cycle, only complaining about the cramp in his hand. She watched her son on the floor, smiling with a single tooth, bashing a pair of wooden blocks together. He will not be the same, she told herself. The nightmares returned in earnest. This time they were of her baby Grown, wearing armor, leading soldiers, sending them into a curtain of smoke. He followed and never returned. With dark circles beneath her eyes, she wrote what would become the second to last entry into her diary. The words seemed to be carved into the page. She had not slept in 3 days, unable to face another dream of her son dying. The Kalors are children of fire, as strong and destructive as their flame, but Kal will not be like the others before. Fire can destroy, fire can kill, but it can also create. Forest burned in the summer will be green by spring, better and stronger than before. Kal's flame will build and bring roots from the ashes of war. The guns will quiet, the smoke will clear, and the soldiers, red and silver both, will come home. 100 years of Wag and my son will bring peace. He will not die fighting. He will not. He will not. Dib was gone, at Fort Patriot in Harbour Bay. But Oven stood just outside her door, his presence forming a bubble of relief. Nothing can touch me while he is here, she thought, smoothing the downy hair on Kal's head. The only person in my head is me. The nurse who came to collect the baby noticed the Queen's agitated manner, her twitching hands, the glazed eyes, but said nothing. It was not her place. Another night came and went. No sleep, but one last entry in Corrie Ann's diary. She had drawn flowers around each word, magnolia blossoms. The only person in my head is me. Tib is not the same. The crown has changed him, as you feared it would. The fire is in him, the fire that will burn all the world. And it is in your son, in the prince who will never change his blood and will never sit a throne. The only person in my head is me. The only person who has not changed is you. You are still the little girl in a dusty room, forgotten, unwanted, out of place. You are queen of everything, mother to a beautiful son, wife to a king who loves you, and still you cannot find it in yourself to smile. Still you make nothing. Still you are empty. The only person in your head is you. And she is no one of any importance. She is nothing. The next morning, a maid found her bridal crown broken on the floor, an explosion of pearls and twisted gold. There was silver on it, blood dark from the passing hours. And her bath water was black with it. The diary ended unfinished, unseen by any who deserved to read it. Only Alara saw its pages, and the slow unravelling of the woman inside. She destroyed the book like she destroyed Corrie Ann. And she dreamed of nothing.